welcome to our YouTube video podcast. That's what I usually like to call this. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. I'm Kwesi Kusi.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Basically, I do a couple of different businesses ranging from agro processing
Mm-hmm.
to hospitality.
Okay.
I focus mostly on coffee.
Okay.
So I've got a coffee roastery here,
Mm-hmm.
which is in the warehouse, and
What's it called?
Jamestown Coffee.
Jamestown Coffee. Okay.
Exactly, yeah. So basically there we roast our coffee, and then obviously we've got um, a pretty rich menu that goes with the coffee.
Okay.
So it's a cafe, an open roastery. We do our processing there. You can see us doing the roasting. We brew
So
coffee.
that's the hospitality side of
That's
the
the
business.
hospitality side of it. And obviously next to us is one of our other businesses, Ali Bar as well. So
Yes. I remember your partner was here
Yep.
last week, and
Yep.
he actually recommended that I speak to you. And I wanted to speak to you even before that because one, I'm a heavy coffee drinker.
Good.
Two, for the last, I don't know how, maybe a year and a half, Jamestown, the cafe. It's like all you need to do is search the hashtag on Instagram. It's like one of the most popular places ever.
We thank
And
God.
everybody goes there for photo ops and everything else.
Yeah.
So those are two pretty significant businesses you're in.
Yeah.
Which one came first?
So Jamestown actually. So
Jamestown Coffee. You mean?
yeah.
Okay.
Um,
How long have you been doing it?
Since I think our first batch was 2018.
So okay.
But prior to that, I was part of another coffee business which I helped start, which is called Upcountry Coffee.
Okay.
So that was like in 2011.
11. Okay.
And I think we were one of the first to roast coffee from Ghana, specifically from Volta region, package it, and sell it locally.
Okay.
So that kind of got the trend going. Eventually, I left to go do Jamestown. That was 2018. And then that was basically in my boys' quarters.
Okay.
And, from the get-go, we got into the supermarkets. Like, the demand was quite strong. People loved it. And we would get all these requests from customers, like, hey, I want to see your factory. And I'm like, okay, this is in my boys' quarters, so it's not, it's not exactly where I would want folks to come.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought, and I mean, it was always the plan that I wanted to get a place where I can do more of a showcase. We would roast openly. We'd process there. People can come in there who are interested in coffee, ask about that. And I always had an interest in, good food, hospitality from all the travels.
So that's how you got into.
We just kind of pair it all together.
Okay. All right. We'll talk about the cafe itself as
Exactly.
a standalone business.
Exactly.
But right now, I want to do a deep dive.
Yeah.
And coffee is not one. Ghanaians by majority are not big coffee drinkers.
Yes.
Two, in Africa, we're not known as a coffee country. I mean, the notable ones are Ethiopian coffee, Rwanda, Kenya, countries like that.
Which are major.
Yes, which are major.
Yeah.
Ghana is known for cocoa.
Yeah.
So for you to do such a brave act and say, okay, fine, we're going to grow and export coffee, what is the thinking behind that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the short answer is typically how I try to approach businesses, I look at like where there's a niche.
What is a niche?
Right? If everyone's selling fried rice, I'm not going to try to do that. And then I also kind of want to play always as to where the culture and the consumption might be going, not where it is already.
So you're predicting the future.
To the extent that you can, right? I mean, you want to catch a wave, right? Or you want to be ahead of it to some degree.
Yes.
And usually, if you're a first mover, you can enjoy a lot of advantages to that. So that's kind of strategically part of it. But I think, there are really large two points. Ghana isn't yet a heavy coffee drinking culture, but that's been changing dramatically for a while.
Yeah.
And we saw this coming all the way back in 2011.
Well,
right?
that's thanks to you, for example.
We were part of it, yes, absolutely. And then, even you have to give credit to, at the time, I mean, I had come back home in 2010, and I was sitting randomly on the street at some bar, and I was talking to someone, and then I was like, listen, it'd be nice to have like a Starbucks here, because that was kind of what I was used to some
Okay.
degree. And then that person incidentally knew somebody who was doing research into coffee in the Volta region, so then we ended up partnering. But it was clear even back then that there wasn't really any cafes there, and it was only a matter of time, which something that was part of city life culture
Yes.
almost in everywhere else would eventually catch on,
Yes.
right? So that wasn't, I don't think it was too hard to see that that was going to come through. So yes, currently maybe we're not like the highest consuming coffee country in the world, but it's growing. I don't know how many Vida cafes there are now, right? There's probably like 10, 12, 15. There's Second Cups. We are there. There's a number of coffee, local coffee roasters around. So the trend is coming. It's only going to grow, right?
Okay.
And one thing I always say is sometimes we take for granted what people consume today, and you assume it's always been the case. I mean, I don't think we always drank Milo in Ghana. Like if you go back 200 years ago, I don't think that's what we did.
Yeah.
But now you can't think of Ghana without Milo. Even rice, I don't think rice is
No,
something that's native
predominantly,
here.
yes.
Now it's like a Ghanaian staple dish.
Okay.
So the question is, someone figured that it might work, and then
I decided to take a chance.
so and it's also more exciting. Creating things is more exciting. Building a culture is more exciting. Building things from scratch that doesn't pretty much exist to some degree is more exciting than, hey, this is what everyone's doing. I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Okay.
So
That's good.
Yeah.
So the first thing you did after you had the idea of growing and exporting coffee would be to acquire the land to do that.
no, so we're actually not in farming.
You're not okay.
No, we're in processing.
Okay.
And
Explain it to me like I was a
so
5-year-old.
yeah, basically, I mean, and this is typical almost any natural resource, right? So obviously, you have at the farm the coffee tree,
Yes.
and you've got the cherries, and you've got the farmers that do that. We go and we buy
From the growers.
exactly.
You don't grow.
No,
Okay.
and then we process, and the processing is roasting, packaging, brewing,
Export.
and then selling, right?
Okay. All right.
So, and that's actually where, I mean, there's a lot we can do with agriculture at the farming level in Ghana. I mean, that's like a whole conversation.
yes, a whole different
But a
conversation.
lot of times what's missing is in the processing, where there's real value add and where you can actually transform and have a larger impact. You remember that the farmers, they need the processes, right?
Yes.
And then obviously the processes need the consumers. The consumers drive everything. But you're not going to eat a ripe coffee cherry off the tree.
No, you're not.
Right? And what tends to happen, which is emblematic of our, historically at least, has been taking from gold to cocoa, whatever. We ship it out, we try to process it somewhere else and bring it back. So doing it locally just kind of cuts out all of
And
that.
it adds more value because I remember watching a documentary.
Yeah.
It was based in Cote d'Ivoire, for
Yeah.
example, and most of the cocoa growers, the local ones, had never tasted bar chocolate
Yeah.
before. Because when you process the bean into chocolate, it's a complete transformation.
It's a complete transformation. And the value in it is like multiples over that, right? I mean, 100% of value we create, well, 100% is, I mean, I would say 99.9% is retained in Ghana.
Okay.
Apart from like the packaging that we have to bring, and even that if you've got a local supplier of these packaging, we'll get them, is retained right here.
Okay.
So we're not shipping our natural resources at, like rock bottom rates to some place in Europe and then having to go back into ShopRite or Maximart and paying European and US prices for it, where all of the value has been eliminated. So that's the real value that we add. We're able to employ people. And then for that reason also, because we can drive quality improvements at the farm, because the value is here, right? There's more that we can invest at the farm to really push up the quality. So I think like processing is a no-brainer.
Okay. So in terms of distribution,
Yeah.
which one works for you more? Foreign exports or local distribution?
I actually don't export.
You don't export at all.
So
Wow.
completely local. And
Wow.
I mean, listen, we're going to export at some point.
Yes.
But it was not from day one. Our goal wasn't, hey, I want to tap into the European markets because again, this is something I personally. There's a lot of consumption locally, and what I always said, and I've said it to I think probably in another interview is, if you go in the supermarkets, right, there's full of people. They're buying stuff.
Yes.
Here, a lot of that stuff it's not made here. So even before you start thinking about, okay, let me get into Europe, let me get into US, which we have to, right? As a go wherever the market is. But what about the consumers that are here, right? What about those who are having to buy things that are then going to be used to pay manufacturers outside of Ghana? Why don't you target those customers? So all our market is local. I mean, we sell at the airport at duty-free sections. So if someone's traveling, they'll buy and take it there.
Take it and then they'll export themselves.
But yeah, we have export opportunities. Part of the things with coffee is also that we're kind of like in the specialty coffee segment, and in that segment, typically, consumers want to buy from kind of a local roaster, especially outside.
So you'd be like a crafts
Yeah,
coffee
correct. Yes.
type
So
of thing.
we're not like a Nestle used.
No, of course not, because you're not.
But we're targeting like higher value, specialty coffee, craft coffee roasting for our local market, and obviously we're going to get into exports, especially within the West African community.
So for example, how many employees do you have? What's the business like in terms of numbers?
So between the two businesses, we got like almost 70 employees.
Okay.
So I mean, that excludes contractors that we work with when we're doing like coffee sorting, and that's what happens when you do local manufacturing, right? From a small coffee roasting machine, we generate a lot of value for people here, people that we employ, and I mean.
So the Jamestown Coffee itself started in 2017, 2018.
Yes.
When did the cafe come about, and what was the idea behind that cafe?
Yeah, so the cafe was in last year, right? And
last year was what? I can't remember.
2020. I mean, it's been a blur.
Yeah, nobody seems to know
exactly
what day it is.
Exactly, November 2020. Yeah.
Okay.
And as I was explaining earlier, we were already roasting and selling to the supermarket shop, right? Maximart, Malcolm, so for consumers, right? And we wanted to have a place where people can also come to us and buy. So that's when the idea of the cafe came, and then we worked towards it.
What I love about the cafe is it serves you an experience. It's not just, hey, let me just go grab a cup of coffee and then go. From even the intangible stuff or the tangible stuff, for example, the way the place looks, the aesthetics.
Yeah.
It's super perfect. And one thing which is predominant now is that in the age of social media, your business needs to look a certain way, which makes it palatable for people to come. So
absolutely.
Are all those things by design, or just happen to be by experiment?
No, by design, right? I mean, obviously, I've got like very strong views about design. I mean, a lot of what I do, when I try to trace as to why I do, what I'm really, really passionate about is design. Okay. Whether it's making a product, creating a business, at the core element of it is designing and creating things, right? Even kind of how our packaging looks. And design really, I'm going to say something that's kind of, I think it's obvious, but it doesn't get talked about, but design is life, right?
Yeah, design thinking. And
everything in life is designed.
It's by design, life itself,
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So there's a thought process to creating something, and why certain things should look a certain way. Why do you have a doorknob? They didn't always exist. Why do they kind of like function that way? Even the human body, why is it, why our nose is shaped that way? So design is very essential. So anything that you do, you kind of have to think about what you're doing and who you're doing it for. Okay. And one of the things that was critical for us was I wanted to make sure that we could give people really high quality stuff at an accessible price. And I think when you put in that effort, it shows that you kind of respect the people that you're dealing with, right? Good. We are like a lower middle income country. I don't know if we've moved to middle income country or not, but we were kind of thinking about those dynamics and like, okay, if you live in a place like this, right? And it's so hard to come by money for a lot of folks. You want to make sure that if you give them a product, that they're getting something that shows that they work hard. That at least appreciates the fact that they've had to work hard for that money. So a lot of that stuff goes into it in terms of, okay, if you come in there and you're going to come and spend your money and spend some time, once you be in a place where you're comfortable, it's not a very pretentious place, but at the same time, it's a kind of an elevated environment.
Yes.
If you spend a CD there, you have to kind of feel like, you're getting
Value for your
something
money.
for
Yeah.
it.
And it's so apparent because the first time I walked in, I looked around me and you could see that a lot of thought, before and after thoughts, had gone into the layout of the place.
Yeah.
For example, you have a different experience when you walk in there compared to any of those other coffee shops. You look around you and you could literally be in any other country.
Yeah.
And for me, that shows that you think about your client or your customer.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you were to do it today, what would you do? What would you do first with all your experience and hindsight?
I mean, not much different from what we did. I think what we did initially was, obviously, you kind of have to map out your path to sales, right? Sometimes business plans depends on the purpose of why you're doing it, right? If you're trying to raise money, and you need to go and convince somebody, there's a format kind of that you want to get into, right? You're going to do a lot of research. You're trying to tell somebody that doesn't share your visions, to give you money, and take risk with that. So you might go into the market and do a lot of market research. You do your analysis, you do your cash flow plans, all that. There's all kinds of business plan formats out there. But, if you kind of know what you want to do, really you're thinking about, okay, what am I going to make? How am I going to sell it? And then how am I going to collect my cash? Then obviously you have to think about, from the selling point of view, think about how you're going to market it, how you think about your niches, you think about your channels. So really it wasn't a very complicated process, but it was initially even coming up with, first of all, this is the kind of product we want to make, so what's our logo going to look like, how we're going to package it, and all of the conversations around that, which is what kind of inputs we need, where are we getting the raw materials, the packaging.
But you've never been in the food industry?
Never been in the food industry. Apart from when you're 17, 18 and working in a restaurant, flipping burgers or washing dishes. But not.
That would scare most people because, most people are risk averse.
Yeah.
I've never done this before.
Yeah.
What I do is I roast and distribute coffee.
Yeah.
And to move from that and then set up a cafe.
Yeah.
Although it's related, it can be scary.
I guess we didn't talk about my full background before, but I was working for General Electric.
Okay.
And even before I got into coffee roasting, right, I was doing risk and market development, for GE. Then I moved into project management, and I ended up in oil and gas. So really, probably up 5 years, for about 5 or 6 years, I was an oil and gas professional. So to even shift from that to go into, I'm going to roast coffee, and then I'm going to open a restaurant. But one thing I find is, yes, people can be risk averse, but I think sometimes the question is, what's your assessment of risk, right? We do tend to say that people are risk averse, but someone might think swimming is risky.
Yes.
For others, it's a hobby. So really, a lot of times it's about the assessment of the risk, and are we able to assess risk properly and gauge what it looks like? People take a lot of tremendous risk without even realizing it, and they will be the first people to tell you that they're risk averse, but maybe they haven't really assessed the risk, like driving without a seatbelt, right? A lot of people do that, but the same people, if you ask them, are you at risk? He's like, yeah, absolutely, I will not. I'm not going to start a business, but you're driving, chances are you're going to die.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of hard to say about sometimes the level of, because the key input is, are you assessing the risk correctly? And the truth is, sometimes you don't really 100% know. What I can say is, and what drives me is following what's in your heart and what's your passion.
So what would you, following what's in your heart and your passion? I was just about to ask you what you would tell somebody who wanted to get into the food industry, who had dreams of owning a cafe, for example. Me, for example, I have dreams of owning a cafe. Yeah. What would you tell me if I came to you for advice?
No, first, it's very hard work. Second, it's something someone else told me. It's a lot of details. If you don't like those details, don't do it.
Yeah.
especially when you like you wanna if it's something like a restaurant, you're gonna want consumers to come and sit there. A lot of things can go wrong, and it's very relentless, and you kind of have to be very comfortable with pushing yourself to be able to be as consistent as possible, which is the hardest thing to do. There's certain things that you can do once in a while, but for a restaurant, think about it, like you have to make a fried egg sandwich or like rice with something the same way every day for 365 days in the year, right? There's a lot of things that can go wrong. So you gotta have to like want to get into the details for particularly restaurants more than like many other things.
Because for example, with the food industry, for example, and especially when it comes to running a restaurant or a cafe, it has to be detailed. Because the food has to have a certain consistency.
Yeah.
Otherwise, one time you could lose all your customers.
You can, yeah. People get away with it. Listen, I mean, sometimes you can open something that is just the only thing out there, and you can get away with like mistakes because that's the only thing that's going. We've all been to places where we didn't always have the most tremendous experience, but we can't stop going there for whatever reason. And again, it goes back to the details. Obviously, what you're serving to people matters, but you know, the stuff around, like the kind of atmosphere you create.
And the presentation.
Sometimes your food is crap, but your music is great and people come there. Sometimes maybe you're just located in the right spot where there's nothing else around, everybody goes.
I think
it's a mix of things.
It's a mix, and all the things you just mentioned, I think you've nailed everything. You're located in the right spot, for example. Your food is great. The number of times I've been there. Now that I know you, the next time I go there, the food isn't great. I'll be like, I know your manager. And I want to speak to him.
No, don't call me. I won't answer. I usually avoid it.
But the food is great. And I think your presentation is also gorgeous. I mean, I think I had breakfast there with my family one time. And like I was served in these little grilled pans. And I was like, oh, this is fancy. You know, and I loved it. So you've nailed all those things. So running a cafe or a restaurant boils down to details.
It does.
In mundane habits.
Particularly, and I want to emphasize that because there are many, many industries out there, right? Not every one of them is as detailed as you need to be for a restaurant. Like when I was working on power projects in oil and gas, you're working on one project for maybe 2-3 years trying to develop a big project. There's a lot of details in it, but it's not an everyday grind, relentless affair. You're trying to get the big strategic things in place, the big pieces, financing, access to market, and you kind of need to hit the high notes properly. But the thing with restaurants is just cooking just has a lot of details in it, and that's why a lot of chefs are very crazy. And you know, people that are in restaurant businesses, you have to like it. You know, because
you have to have the passion.
You have to want to do it. You will stop, otherwise you stop after 1 year. That said. You know, I always just try to tell people, like, don't underestimate kind of what's in your heart, right? Because that's where authenticity comes from. A lot of times people want to start a business and they start by saying, I hear that right now, like, if you sell pure water, you make money.
X and Y is doing it, so let me also do it.
But someone's already doing that, so what value are you going to add to that? But what do you personally care about? And sometimes people say in a business you shouldn't be emotional. I don't really think so. I think you should be emotional. I think you should be, because why should I buy something from you that you don't care about? Why are you trying to sell me something you don't like, right? So first, sometimes I think if you step back and you think about what am I passionate about, then you kind of start seeing how that passion locates or in the context that you're in and how you can kind of put business structures around. Like, business formulas are business formulas anyway, right? I mean, you can read a P&L the same way anywhere. But it's that ingredient of what you are going to bring to the table. And if it's the right time for it, and if you've got the right go-to-market strategy, the right kind of team around you, you know, don't underestimate what you care about.
So, prior to opening, what was your first week of opening like? No, even prior to that, do you do any marketing before opening?
A little bit, yeah, because you have to tell people you're about to open. So usually it's hell because you're doing construction, you're trying to hire people.
Give me the playbook to opening a cafe.
To open a cafe?
Step one.
Okay,
No,
right.
not a playbook,
I
but
can.
just walk. Okay.
I mean, I can tell you a little
Listen,
bit.
easy question.
First is yeah. Go ahead.
What kind of marketing did you do?
Nowadays social media these
Social
days,
media. Okay.
right? So you have to do that. So playbook to open a cafe, if you will, is like figure out what you're gonna sell. Are you selling banku? Are you selling like fish and chips or
Yeah.
figure out what you're gonna sell.
So drop your menu.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, usually like you can break down almost any business into your product,
Yes. And
how
service
you're gonna
offerings.
sell it,
Yeah.
right? So what's your product? Okay,
Yes.
which is your menu.
Yeah.
Then obviously you have to find people to help you make that. No matter how good you are, you're gonna need people to help you. How you're gonna package it, how you're gonna present it.
Yes.
And one thing that I've had to learn, probably the biggest lesson I've learned the last 2 years is marketing, because I was working for an industrial company, which
You weren't in charge of that.
no, listen,
you were
and
being
even
spoon
they
fed.
didn't really do any
Yeah.
when you're doing big. Listen, I mean, you know about GE. I think probably the bulk, or maybe like a lion's share of the airplanes flying,
Yeah.
the engines are made by the company I used to work for, Boeing. So all Boeing engines are like maybe not all of them, a large chunk of them are made by GE, right? So you think about how complicated. It's a massive industry, and there's a couple of players in there. So maybe they're not necessarily on social media doing day-to-day marketing. It's a big business-to-business kind of venture. Think about oil and gas, right? I was running the oil and gas uh, division for GE in Ghana, which later became Baker Hughes. So I was based in Takoradi, right? And we had two major customers in Ghana, E&I, Tolo. We supply these like massive 75-ton equipment that go, subsea and then helps with the production of oil. You're not hearing about that on TV, on radio, because that's not the kind of segment, right? So I come from that background where it's like more business to business. You're looking at your technology, your mash, your pricing, your competition, but it's not FMCG industry. Now, once you get into something like a restaurant, once you get into something like selling coffee, it's completely different. You constantly have to be in the minds of your customers. And that's where your marketing comes in. And we had to learn that, frankly, like a bit of the hard way. Because in the beginning, we're like, this place is nice, it's a vibe. If you see it, you're going to like it. They will come.
Yeah.
And then you're like looking around and people haven't showed up.
Yeah.
And even people who've been there before. And they're like, yeah, I'm going to come again. But, it's like you kind of have to constantly remind them. So we've learned things like sometimes when you don't post for a couple of days, your sales drop.
Yes.
Is that dramatic? So that's something that I feel has been like an eye-opener for me. I'm by no means an expert in marketing, but one thing I've come to appreciate is really spending time on it and getting people who can help you do that.
But then that comes naturally with owning your own business, because then you find out you have to wear so many different hats.
No, absolutely.
Which you didn't care about before, know, because, for example, if you're employed gainfully, there's a whole division which is set up for that.
Exactly.
So you're being spoon-fed. You don't have to be on top of anything, because all these things come to you. You open up your emails and then like 700 unread messages. But when you start your own business, like you said, it boils down to details. You have to be on top of every minute detail, because that is your life source. That is your business.
Yeah.
You have to be, okay.
There's a lot of truth in detail, and people forget. And the thing is, and I'm going to segue in a little bit. The classic struggle is always between big picture and detail. And the truth is they're all linked.
Yes.
Right? You have to work your way to the big picture from the details and vice versa. So usually you're oscillating between what's your big vision and then informed by really the details on the ground. Because a lot of times you also find people who are like this rabbit hole, can't see beyond just the next level of data, right? And can piece all that data together. That's also not going to help you, right? So you really have to go up and down that chain, constantly be able to go all the way to, you can go to the kitchen and like, okay, why is that food consistently taking 45 minutes? Oh, it's because like, they cut it over there and then they plate it there and then they do it there and like, okay, I see what it is. I have to put them all together. You have to like rearrange the process. And the customer has no idea. He's like,
why is my food taking long?
And you as a business owner, if you're not involved in the details, you're like, my staff suck, right? They're terrible. I need to fire everyone. And then you go there, it's like, maybe it's not. Like I really need to kind of rearrange the food.
What was your first opening week like? Overwhelmed or underwhelmed?
Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed.
Both good and bad. But this is where big picture comes in. We expected that. You know, I mean, we were happy to receive the customer, but we expected we were going to have issues, that we're not a finished product. And, you know, we had to open at that point. So for me, my focus was, we're not ready 100%. We may never be ready 100%. Let's open and let's keep fixing our problems. And I remember I used to tell some of our customers, like, yeah, thank you for coming. And we would even give people discounts around the time. It's like, yeah, listen, we're going to have issues for at least 3 months. A lot of the staff are new. They're getting used to the system. We're also kind of learning and taking feedback from customers on what we can adjust. So we're going to just keep working through the process. So, yes, we were overwhelmed that way, that we had demand and we were not like fully prepared, but we knew that was coming. And, I think because we knew that was coming, like, we're just going to give ourselves time and we'll be fine. And sometimes that's the advantage when you're thinking longer term, right? And people kind of have a short memory. We all have a short memory, right? If you think about
Either short or selective.
Oh, selective. Exactly. I mean,
Either short or imperfection makes us select
exactly
the most fond memories and shelf the bitter
exactly,
memories.
right? I mean, sometimes people think that you get one bad feedback and you're done. I mean, listen, there's a lot of businesses. Talk to like a lot of the businesses that are out here. They've had their fair share of like
Ups and downs.
and they're around and people still go. I mean, the key is, I think, when you keep improving, that's more important. Like every day trying to get better is more important than really how you start.
Okay. All right. So, what has your partnership with the Ali Bar also been like?
So that's like one of our companies. So it's kind of a sub of Jamestown.
Yes.
And then on that side, I've got my partner Kojo, who you met. So that's something that Kojo and myself created. And you asked a question earlier, which came first. I mean, Jamestown came first in terms of when that was set up, because we're doing the,
No, but as far as we know, the people know, Ali Bar opened before Jamestown.
This is exactly, this is the point I was getting to. So basically, this is what I was trying to explain, that, Jamestown, what we see now is a cafe.
Yes.
But really, it's coffee roasting company, which has been going for a couple of years. So essentially, I was telling you a story about the Boy Scouters and looking for a warehouse.
Yeah.
So when we got there, right, the plan was to do the cafe. But then, basically in that same property was this kind of alleyway that was dilapidated. And the idea was, you know what, even if people are in here in the cafe, someone might want to smoke a cigarette or want to kind of catch fresh air. Why don't we create an outdoor space where they can just go and chill out?
That's a beautiful story.
And then
I'm sorry, brother.
That's basically like, you know what? Then it turned out that we were looking at, at least like I was looking at the capital requirements.
So then you killed two birds with one, no, more than two birds.
Exactly.
You killed 2 or 3 bags with one stone.
Yeah, it ended up being easier, and thanks to one of my friends who had it, because we're looking at, you asked about a business plan. We did put together a business plan because we're looking at trying to raise some capital for that. So I actually went to the States when some of my friends, presented to them this whole thing about the coffee, and we talked about the bar that was going to happen. And when we looked at the capital requirements, it was a lot less costly to do the bar than the cafe. So a friend of mine was like, why don't you do the bar first?
Yeah.
And then you reinvest that, at least once you're established, you know what to do. Then I'm like, sure, that makes sense. And we wanted to open for Christmas, so ended up doing the bar first, and then later on tacked on.
That's a beautiful story. And what it tells me is that as a business, or even as an individual, you must be open to change.
You have to.
And you have to be dynamic.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be set in your ways. Sometimes growth can be uncomfortable, but once you're open to it, because you look at your trajectory from roasting coffee to setting up a cafe to finding an empty space next to where you wanted to set up the cafe to opening up a bar there.
Yeah.
And then for us behind the scenes, we don't see all that work going in.
Yeah.
We don't see the years of growth and experiments to what it is today. And we walk in every day and we're thinking that, oh, this is just, overnight success.
Yeah.
But then if you think deep into it,
Yeah.
it's something that has charted a course all the way from 2011
Exactly.
and has brought to bear all your prior experiences. It's a
Exactly. Yeah.
beautiful story.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, we're grateful, right? I mean, I don't feel like we're entitled to anything. Generally, no one really is. And it's nice when you work hard and it pays off, because it doesn't always pay off. A lot of people work hard. So you kind of have to maintain that humility that, really, we're really blessed, and that, essentially what I take home, is it's not the hype. I told you this on the phones. I'm not the biggest hype man.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure for a lot of people who are watching,
Yeah.
this might be the first time they can put a face to the name
Yeah.
or to the business, for example.
Yeah, I mean, although there was one interview we did some like months back when we opened that maybe some people can type, but generally, like, I prefer like a bit more of the low profile vibes, right? It just gives
Yeah.
you freedom. Now, the point that I was trying to make with that is, it's not so much whether we are obviously very proud that people come there, because you want people to come there, but that's not, for me personally, even the biggest thing. The biggest thing was just having an idea and having the opportunity to be able to do it. That is satisfaction. So sometimes I think about, the day that we first opened the alley, was I happier then than I am now? And I realized it was basically the same.
Yeah.
And obviously, the day we opened the alley or the cafe, it wasn't as popular as it is today. But remembering that is very important, because you kind of know why you're doing it. Just the opportunity to be able to. The real gift in life, a lot of times, right? It's not, it's not necessarily like monetary or financial, but it's more of, if you have the ability and the opportunity to do something that's in your heart, that's a win. Right? And then if that goes well, that's like extra bonus.
Yes.
Right? But when you can carve something, you can create something that's in your heart, that's like your passion, makes you happy, and you just have the chance to do it. Because I can tell you, that is very rare. A lot of people have great ideas,
But
no
never see it to
financing,
fruition.
I mean, and sometimes it's not their fault. No access to finance is very tough. No one to guide them, no training. I mean, we can say all this stuff about all these ideas, but I work for One International, which is famous for developing leaders and for building skill sets. And I was running an oil and gas company, so I know what it's like to be able to set up a company, whatever field it is, to be able to run it. So I can't take credit for all of the things we've done. I've been trained, right? And that training makes it easier to be able to execute some of these projects, and not everyone gets that
The
chance.
opportunity.
So that's really the reward.
So I ask people I talk to all the time about this. Do you think entrepreneurs are born or are made over time?
I mean, I think it's both.
Got a big one.
No, I
This
mean, listen,
one.
I don't know enough.
Yeah.
To,
No.
to
So
see. But what
here's the thing.
I really think
It's an
is,
open forum. Nobody's gonna hold you. Don't feed
No,
don't feed the
serious.
trolls. Don't
No.
mind the trolls.
Yeah.
People can leave all sorts of mean
No,
comments.
I listen. You know, one thing I
Your
do.
opinion.
Yes.
Do you think entrepreneurs are born or are made?
The answer I gave you wasn't political. It's really what I think. I think it's both. And I think, okay, first of all, sometimes I like to step back and think about, I mean, what's the definition of being an entrepreneur in the first place? Right? If we answer that correctly, I think it might make the secondary question which you ask, which is whether they're born or made. So if it's being an entrepreneur, creating something you like,
Yes.
the definition of an entrepreneur, then obviously, like, it's, everyone is born with something that they like, and they also pick up, certain things over time through experiences, through trainings, right? So I don't think it's, it's sometimes we kind of have to think about what does it actually mean to be an entrepreneur. Now, in the context that a lot of people think about it, are some people naturally able to figure things out?
Yes.
Without a lot of guidance, where are some people visionaries? Are some people, do some people have a better ability to bring certain concepts and ideas to life and make them successful? Yes, right? There's some people that you can drop them anywhere in the world,
Yes.
and they like will basically figure it out. You can drop them in the war zone, and then they'll come out like they'll be fine. You drop bombs on them, they're okay, right? There are people like that. There are people who also are not like that, but want to do it. So they kind of like, okay, this is not my strength. Let me get someone to help me figure it out. So the truth is I think it's more complicated,
It's more
right? And I think if I have a clearer definition of what an entrepreneur is, maybe it'd be easier to answer that question. And to be honest, I don't know
Second
what that
question:
is.
hard work or talent?
Both.
Both. Okay.
Messi or Ronaldo. That's the answer to your question.
Ronaldo for me.
Yeah.
No,
Think
no.
about that guy. That guy, right?
For
You
me,
know why I actually kind of like Ronaldo?
what?
He's like that guy in school he was kind of smart, but he was not the naturally gifted guy. But he worked harder than everybody else.
Yeah, he can take
That's
he,
one.
he can take a punch.
So I feel like I can, obviously Messi is just naturally gifted. You can't teach some of the skills that he's got.
Yes.
And it probably answers your question about whether entrepreneurs are
Yeah.
born right?
Yeah.
But you can tell that Ronaldo is actually not naturally that skillful. Have you seen him try to do stepovers? These things suck,
Yeah.
right? But I'm sorry for all the Ronaldo fans, but he's like you can tell that this guy, this like stepovers and his
Yeah.
feints is not as natural to him as Messi.
Yeah.
But that guy, nobody in football works harder than him.
True.
And that's why he's able to compete with somebody who's once in a generation
But
talent like Messi.
even apart from that, you have to work smart as well.
Yeah.
Just all grit, natural hard work
Yeah.
sometimes doesn't cut it in
Yeah.
this day and age that we're in.
Yeah.
Hard work
100%.
and then smart work as well.
100%.
Because if you work hard without being smart, without having visions or goals or things set out, objectives, for example, you're gonna burn out.
Yeah, 100%. Listen, I gotta tell you something. You can't replace talent. Okay, in a lot of ways. And whether it's sports, some people just have a natural ability that you can't replace that. But even those with a natural ability, for them to execute their full potential, they have to work hard.
That's true.
So that's how those two things are linked, right?
So they're complementary.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people who are just like savants, right? Who are like math geniuses. There's nothing you can do to somebody like me to turn me into that guy. That guy is just like that, right? But, maybe stuff comes effortlessly to folks like that, but doesn't mean you can just sleep all day and not. No, generally not.
All right. So what's next for Jamestown Coffee, the cafe? What's next?
Yeah, so I mean, listen, it's going to
Are
be
you franchising?
Yeah.
Can I buy a franchise?
We can talk about it. We can talk about it. It's a local brand, right?
Well,
Made in Ghana.
Listen,
Premium local brand.
If the franchises are open, then you have to put me on, because then it makes all the hard work easy.
Yeah, we'll have a conversation.
I live on this side of town. You're on the other side of town.
Exactly.
I find a warehouse here.
Yeah.
I take advantage of the opportunity, and then
I mean, that's basically, for at least for now, our flagship, right? The idea is we're going to have it in multiple places. And remember, like, I roast coffee, I want to sell it. The easiest place to sell coffee is in my own cafe. So that's the fundamental philosophy. So
that's what all the other people do.
Exactly.
Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, whatever it is.
It's nothing really new. We're just doing it here locally with our stuff, right?
It's
with
only
our
a
own
natural
kind
byproduct.
of exactly on authenticity to it.
It's one of the best ways to introduce, let's say, non-heavy coffee drinkers to coffee.
That's a bigger story.
Yes, that's a bigger story, because then you make it in a palatable way for them.
Exactly. And you open their world into the possibilities. Yeah.
All right. And once you taste blood, you can't go back. You form a bad habit of
unless you have heart palpitations, in which case. Yeah.
Well, Kwesi, thanks for coming. And,
that was a pleasure.
Listen, any last words to any budding entrepreneurs? It doesn't have to be anything tried. You can just speak your heart.
Listen, I think it's one of the things I said before, right? I mean, whatever is in you, right? If it's good, nurture it.
Perfect.
That's what I'll just nurture it. You never know what's going to come out of that.
All right.
So,
all right.
Not the bad thoughts, the good ones. Don't nurture bad stuff.
Thank you for coming, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.